My family forced me to become an alcoholic from the moment I was born. I mean that literally. From the very beginning of my life, my family practically raised me to be an alcoholic. And I'm not speaking figuratively. I mean that in the most literal way possible. My parents were, hands down, the wildest, most out-of-control people I've ever known. As soon as I hit 10 years old, their idea of family bonding was teaching me and my older brother, Jake, how to drink like seasoned adults. Every Friday night was what my dad proudly called training night. We'd all gather around the kitchen table while he lined up shots of tequila, and Mom would clap and cheer us on, keeping track of how long we could go without wincing. If we coughed or gagged, we had to drop and give push-ups until our arms couldn't hold us up anymore. The rule was simple. Families who drink together stay together. It was something passed down from generation to generation, according to them. Their parents did it. Their grandparents too. I always thought it was total nonsense, but Jake, he took to it like it was second nature. By the time he was 14, he'd become Dad's drinking buddy of choice. They'd stay up playing beer pong until 4 in the morning in the garage. Mom loved to brag to her friends about how her teenage son could drink full-grown men under the table. When Jake started showing up to breakfast with shaky hands, Dad would just laugh and crack open a cold one for him, calling it the good ol' hair of the dog. And the more Jake drank, the more they spoiled him. New video games, tickets to concerts, and even a motorcycle for his 16th birthday. Meanwhile, I was quietly labeled the family disappointment, by default, really. Not because I was out getting into trouble or failing classes, but because I was doing the opposite. I was acing my classes, leading the debate team, working a part-time job to save for college, and staying completely sober. Mom loved to throw one particular line at me. You know what your problem is? You're always judging people instead of learning how to relax and have fun. But it was tough to take her seriously when she was slurring every other word and bouncing off furniture like a pinball. I did think about calling someone, authorities, child services, anyone, but I was scared. My best friend Sarah had once tried doing that for her own situation. The social worker showed up and left, and the moment they were gone, Sarah's dad beat her so badly she was covered in bruises. That scared me straight out of considering CPS ever again. Then came the night that changed the course of everything. It was Jake's 18th birthday. He was bent over on the porch, laughing about these sharp pains he'd been having in his side for weeks. Probably just need to up my tolerance, he joked, though under the porch light, his skin had a yellowish tint. Dad's reaction? He pulled out a $200 bottle of scotch he'd been saving and gave Jake a hard slap on the back. Nothing a strong drink won't fix. I honestly thought he was messing around. But then Mom pulled out her phone and started filming, saying it was for Jake's future kids. That's when it hit me. If I wanted to make it out of this mess alive, I had to play the part. I slipped into a role like a professional actress, fake laughing at their drunken stories, pretending to be tipsy myself, while secretly dumping my drinks into houseplants when nobody was looking. And the most heartbreaking part? It worked. For the first time, they treated me like one of them. Everything took a turn once I started college at Oregon State. My randomly assigned roommate happened to be in recovery from alcohol addiction. Through her, I got introduced to a whole different world. A world where people actually had fun without constantly being buzzed. I joined a sober support group on campus, dove into books and talks on addiction, and finally understood that what I'd gone through at home wasn't some weird bonding ritual. It was inherited trauma, dressed up like tradition. For the first time in my life, I felt clear, grounded, genuinely happy. I even started training for marathons, something I never would have dreamed of while faking hangovers every weekend just to blend in. Then, during winter break of my sophomore year, I did something that, looking back, was probably reckless and naive. I decided to go back home for the holidays. Part of me thought maybe this was it, the big moment where I could finally break the cycle. I wanted to show my family that life without alcohol could be good. In the days leading up to it, I did everything I could to prepare. I collected photos from sober get-togethers with my new friends, and even picked up non-alcoholic beer and champagne. I kept telling myself not to get my hopes up, but as I packed up my car, I couldn't help but dream about us sitting around like a normal family, finally on the same page. The moment I stepped through the door, Dad handed me a beer. There she is, our college party girl. When I smiled and politely declined, saying I was in training for a race, Mom's whole expression soured. Oh, so that's what you are now? Too good for us, huh? From there, things just kept going downhill. When I tried to head to bed early, they barged into my room with a bottle of tequila. You're not gonna ruin Christmas being a stuck-up prude, Mom snarled at me. What happened after that still shakes me. Dad pinned my arms down while Mom tried to force the bottle between my lips. I clenched my jaw shut, crying as the tears ran down my face, until Dad pinched my nose to cut off my breathing. I finally gasped for air, and Mom used that moment to pour tequila straight into my mouth. I vomited instantly. They just laughed. She's rusty, Dad chuckled. For the next hour, they kept trying to make me drink more. I kicked, screamed, and fought them off, but it didn't matter. Jake just stood in the doorway, too far gone to do anything. I faked passing out, went totally limp. When they finally left, I pulled out my phone and used it to record them through the cracked door, still laughing and saying they'd finally broken me in again. From the floor of my closet, I dialed 911. I sat there, heart pounding, listening as the sound of sirens grew louder and closer. I could see them through the closet slats. Mom and Dad froze mid-laugh as the red and blue lights began to flash through the windows. Mom dropped the tequila bottle, and it shattered on the hardwood. Did you hear that? Mom's voice went from sloppy to sharp in a second. Dad staggered to the window and yanked back the curtain. The lights painted his face in red and blue. Someone called the cops. They both turned toward my room. I stayed as still as I could, my phone clutched in my sweaty hand, praying they thought I was still passed out. My throat burned from the tequila they forced down, and my shirt still reeked of vomit. Check if she's really unconscious, Dad said. You check, Mom shot back. This is your fault for going too far. My fault, he snapped. You're the one who poured it down her throat. Their arguing bought me just enough time. I slipped out of the closet and stretched out on my bed, pretending to be knocked out, breathing slow and shallow. Footsteps stomped toward me. Dad grabbed my shoulder and gave it a hard shake. She's out cold, he said. Not long after, the doorbell rang, followed by firm, heavy knocking. Police. Open up, came a loud voice from outside. Mom jumped into action, grabbing a can of Febreze and spraying it like mad across the living room, all while nudging broken glass under the couch with her foot. Jake, get down here and act like everything's normal, she shouted. I could hear Jake stumbling down the stairs, bouncing off the walls like a pinball. Through the small crack of my half-closed eyes, I watched him clutch the banister, his whole body swaying like a branch in the wind. Even in the dim hallway light, that yellow tint in his skin was hard to miss. Stand up straight, Dad muttered, smacking Jake lightly on the back. Remember, we were just having a quiet family evening. The knocking got louder and more urgent. Police, open this door now. Dad took a deep breath, slapped on his fake salesman grin, and pulled the door open. Two officers stood there on the front porch, both with one hand resting on their belts. Evening, officers, Dad said smoothly. Something going on? We received a 911 call from this address, the taller officer said as he peered past Dad into the house. There was a report of a disturbance. Dad didn't miss a beat. Must be a mistake, he said, voice calm as ever. Just a quiet family night in. And that was my cue. I stepped out of my room, moving slowly, wearing my Oregon State hoodie with dried vomit still down the front, my throat raw and sore. The moment the female officer spotted me, her expression changed. Ma'am, are you okay? She asked, stepping closer. Before I could answer, Mom swooped in and wrapped an arm around my shoulders. Oh, officers, I'm so sorry, she said sweetly. Our daughter's been struggling with her mental health ever since college. She's been acting out, Dad added, playing concerned parent like he was auditioning for a commercial. She's been unstable for a while now. We're doing everything we can to get her help, but she won't cooperate. I opened my mouth to speak, though my throat felt like it had been scraped raw. My voice came out hoarse. They forced alcohol down my throat. Mom's grip on my shoulder tightened like a vice. See what I mean? She said quickly. She makes up these stories. We found her drinking alone in her room. We think she's having some sort of breakdown, Dad added with a fake sigh. The two officers exchanged a quiet glance. The male one turned back to me. Ma'am, I'm going to need to speak with everyone separately. Could you step outside with Officer Martinez? As I headed toward the door with the officer, I caught a glimpse of Jake lingering on the stairs, torn between stepping outside with me or staying planted near our parents. His hands were trembling, and he kept pressing on the spot on his side that had been bothering him for weeks. His eyes darted back and forth, that flicker of loyalty dimming like a dying bulb. Out on the porch, Officer Martinez's eyes went straight to the mess on my hoodie. Can you tell me what happened tonight? My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. I have a video, I said quietly. They held me down and forced tequila into my mouth. Through the front window, I could see Mom flailing her arms as she talked, while Dad leaned in close to the other officer, likely laying on more of his charm. Mom kept gesturing at me and shaking her head like I was the problem. Next door, our neighbor Mrs. Morgan peeked through her blinds, probably wondering what the latest disaster was. May I see the video? Officer Martinez asked gently. I hit play. Even through the cracked door, their slurred voices were clear, laughing, mocking, talking about breaking me back in. The look on Officer Martinez's face shifted. Her jaw tightened. We need to review this, she said, calling over to her partner. Suddenly, Mom's voice rang out from inside. That's out of context. She's twisting things to make us look bad. Dad's tone changed too, snapping. Where's your warrant? That fake friendly attitude vanished like smoke. You can't just barge in here and accuse us based on the ramblings of our mentally unstable daughter. The male officer looked past him and saw Jake leaning against the wall. Even under the porch light, his skin looked pale and waxy. Sir, is your son all right? He looks like he might need medical attention, the officer said. It's just the flu, Mom jumped in quickly. He's fine. Jake, tell them you're fine. Jake opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked at me, then at Mom and Dad, then back at me again. His silence spoke volumes, but he still couldn't bring himself to say anything. We're going to need paramedics, Officer Martinez said into her radio. Possible case of alcohol poisoning. Medical emergency in progress. Dad raised his voice. This is insane. I golf with Sheriff Patterson every Sunday. He turned to the officers. This is just a misunderstanding. Family stuff getting blown out of proportion. My daughter's upset because we had to cut her off financially. She's always been a little self-righteous about drinking. While we waited for the medics to arrive, Mom's fingers were flying across her phone screen. Moments later, my phone buzzed with message after message. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all coming in hot. Traitor, how could you turn on your parents? Your mom says you're having a breakdown. Get help. The paramedics pulled up, wasted no time, and began checking me over. One of them shined a light down my throat as I explained what had happened. I winced as they poked around. Chemical burns, the medic muttered. Looks like it's consistent with forced alcohol ingestion. She'll need to be checked out at the hospital. She did it for attention, Mom snapped. She's always had a flair for the dramatic. Meanwhile, Jake winced again and pressed on his side. One of the paramedics noticed. Sir, we should take a look at you too, they said to Jake. He's fine, Dad cut in fast. Just the flu. But standing under those porch lights, there was no hiding it anymore. Jake's skin was yellowing, his hands were trembling, and he kept instinctively pressing on that same spot. The medics knew what they were seeing. How long's your side been hurting like that? One of them asked directly. Jake looked over at Dad, then muttered. A few weeks, it's nothing. Dad immediately jumped back into his fake friendly mode. You know, Sheriff Patterson and I were just talking about this sort of thing at poker the other night, he said casually. Family disagreements getting blown way out of proportion. He always says these things should be handled privately. The warning behind those words couldn't have been more obvious. Officer Martinez's expression hardened. Sir, we're going to need everyone to come down to the station and give formal statements. I'm calling our lawyer, Mom snapped. This is harassment. Our daughter is clearly unwell, and instead of helping, you're feeding her delusions. The officers got to work collecting evidence. They bagged up the shattered tequila bottle, took pictures of my vomit-stained hoodie, and documented everything they could. Dad stood nearby, fists clenched, watching them work, his jaw locked tight with silent fury. My phone kept vibrating in my pocket. I glanced at the screen. Mom had sent out a group message to the entire extended family. Please pray for us. The post Mom wrote hit Facebook like a grenade. Our daughter is having another episode. She called the police on us tonight. We're absolutely heartbroken. She refuses to get the mental help she needs. The responses came pouring in within seconds. Uncle Ray wrote, that ungrateful brat. Aunt Susan chimed in with, after all you've done for her? Then came Cousin Mark, some kids just don't deserve good parents. At the police station, we were all separated for questioning. I sat alone in a small room, the burning in my throat still sharp, while Officer Martinez calmly took my statement. Out the window, I spotted someone hustling across the parking lot. It was Uncle Tony, Mom's brother. He'd been drinking right alongside my parents for decades and just so happened to be a lawyer. The moment he stepped through the doors, he threw his voice around like he owned the place. My client won't be answering any questions, he declared, loud enough for everyone to hear. His breath reeked of whiskey. And just like that, the whole situation took a sharp, unexpected turn. Uncle Tony slapped a thick folder of documents down on the front desk. My clients have been deeply concerned about their daughter's mental health for years, he said, sounding like he was reading from a script. Here's documentation to prove it. Officer Martinez flipped through the pages. I caught quick glimpses, medical forms, all dated years back. My stomach dropped. I knew exactly what they were from. When I was 16, I had refused to drink during Thanksgiving dinner. That was all it took for my parents to drag me to a doctor and claim I was antisocial, paranoid, and showing delusional behavior about alcohol. This clearly shows a long-standing pattern of instability, Uncle Tony said, smoothing his voice into something more polished. My clients have been supporting her emotionally and financially for years. College tuition, rent, car insurance, even her phone bill. And this is how she chooses to thank them? Just then my phone buzzed. A message from Jake. Why couldn't you just pretend for one more night? The words cut deeper than anything else that night. After everything, after watching what they did to me, he still thought I was the one to blame. Officer Martinez stepped out to talk with her partner. Through the hallway, I could hear Mom's voice echoing, sharp and bitter. She's always been jealous of Jake, she was saying. He's got friends, charm, a future. She just wants to tear everything down because she can't stand not being the center of attention. When Martinez came back in, her face was neutral, but her eyes had that careful look of someone walking a tightrope. The video is concerning, she said. But your parents' attorney is arguing that it's been taken out of context. Without Jake backing you up, it's your word against theirs. What about my throat? I asked, voice hoarse. The burns. They're saying you did that to yourself, she said. That it's not the first time you've hurt yourself for attention. My thoughts immediately jumped to Sarah. How her bruises hadn't been enough. How she had cried on my bedroom floor, wondering why the system didn't save her. Now I knew why. My parents had studied what not to do. No bruises. No broken bones. Just enough psychological warfare to wear you down slowly. And a carefully planted paper trail to make the victim look like the problem. We'll continue the investigation, Martinez said gently. But for now, do you have a safe place you can stay? Safe. That word hit me like a punch. I wasn't sure I'd ever felt safe. And now, thanks to my parents' smear campaign, there probably wasn't a single place left where I could feel safe. By morning, the story would already be spreading about the ungrateful daughter who called the cops on her devoted parents. The mentally unstable girl who refused the help they so desperately tried to give her. My phone buzzed again, a Facebook notification. Mom had gone public. Please pray for our family tonight. Our daughter is battling mental health issues and addiction. We love her more than words can say, but we just don't know how to help her anymore. Tonight, she called the police after we tried to stop her from drinking alone in her room. Our hearts are shattered. The comments were already flooding in. Family friends, neighbors, people from the bowling league, all offering prayers, hugs, and support for my poor parents as they struggled to care for their troubled daughter. I scrolled through the messages, watching my character get shredded in real time. Then something stopped me cold. It was a comment from Mr. Davidson, Dad's longtime golf buddy, who worked at the local news station. So sorry to hear this, buddy. Let me know if you need anything. That was it. By tomorrow, this wouldn't just be a family matter. It would be a headline. Dad was already crafting his version of the story, playing the victim while I, the one they held down and forced alcohol into, was becoming the villain. The man who pinned my arms down was now the concerned father. The woman who snarled at me and poured tequila down my throat was suddenly the heartbroken mother. I sat there, alone in the interview room, just me and the relentless ping of notifications lighting up my phone. Every buzz felt like another brick closing in around me. Mom's post had already gone semi-viral in our small town. 67 comments and climbing. The bowling league president said he'd organize a prayer circle. Dad's friends were putting together a fundraiser for my treatment. Even my old English teacher from high school chimed in, saying she'd always suspected something wasn't right. My fingers trembled as I kept scrolling. Then I saw a message that made me stop breathing. It was from Luke, the bartender at the bar my parents practically lived at. Jake's been going to AA meetings at the church. Been coming for 3 months. Your parents have no idea. Before I could even process that, the door swung open again. Uncle Tony strutted in, now holding a briefcase and a stack of papers thick enough to kill a fly in midair. These are your parents' financial records, he said, slapping them down in front of me. They've been paying for your schooling, your rent, your insurance, even your phone. Is this really the direction you want to take things? Officer Martinez walked back into the room, clearly trying to hold her composure. Sir, she said sharply, you are not allowed to threaten a witness. I'm not threatening anyone, Uncle Tony replied smoothly. I'm simply giving my niece the full picture so she can make an informed decision. My phone buzzed again. A text from my roommate. Your mom just added me on Facebook. She's asking some really weird questions about your mental health. What should I do? I felt the walls closing in tighter. Mom was already trying to worm her way into my support system, probably planting seeds of doubt like she'd done with everyone else. I showed the message to Officer Martinez. She made a note, but looked like she was barely holding it together with this circus of a family situation unfolding in front of her. Uncle Tony leaned in close, his breath soaked in whiskey. Look, he said in a low voice. Your parents are willing to put all this behind them. Chalk it up to a misunderstanding. They'll even pay for therapy, he added. Real therapy. None of that experimental college nonsense. All you have to do, he said, like it was nothing, is admit you were confused about what happened tonight. Confused? My voice cracked as I stared at him. They held me down and forced alcohol down my throat. You were wasted, he said plainly. Your memory's probably just messing with you. Maybe you had a couple drinks to calm your nerves before coming home. Things spiraled, and your parents tried to step in. It happens sometimes. Right then, Officer Martinez's partner knocked and came through the door. We've got to take the brother to the hospital. His condition's getting worse. I glanced through the doorway and caught a quick look at Jake being wheeled out on a gurney. His skin looked almost green, and he was curled up, clutching his side. For a second, our eyes locked, and in his, I saw nothing but fear. That deep, gut-level kind. Jake. I tried to get up, but Uncle Tony stepped in front of me. He'll be okay, he said calmly. Just needs fluids. Stress from tonight probably made his flu flare up. But I knew better than that. I'd spent months digging into liver disease after noticing the symptoms Jake had been showing. The yellowing skin, the pain in his stomach, the shaking. He was in real danger. Martinez must have seen the panic on my face. We'll make sure he gets the care he needs, she said. His liver's shutting down, I said, the words flying out. They need to evaluate him for a transplant, like, now. Please, tell them to run a full liver panel. Uncle Tony's expression went dark. Oh great, now you're playing doctor? This is exactly the kind of unhinged behavior your parents have been dealing with. Just then, my phone rang. Dad's contact photo popped up, him holding a beer at last year's 4th of July cookout. Even though I knew I shouldn't, I picked up. You proud of yourself? He said, voice colder than I'd ever heard. Your brother's in the hospital now because of all the stress you've caused. If anything happens to him, it's your fault. He's sick because you've been slowly poisoning him since he was 10. I shot back. We gave him tradition. A way to belong, Dad snapped. You're the one who turned your back on us. You're the one who thinks you're better. In the background, I heard Mom's voice. Tell her about the diary. A chill ran down my spine. What diary? I asked. The one you kept back in ninth grade, Dad replied. The one where you wrote about how much you hated us, how you dreamed of running away, said you wished you had different parents. We held on to it, you know, just in case we ever needed to remind folks who you really are. Then the line cut off. I stared at my phone, stunned, remembering that old diary. I'd stashed it under my mattress. It was full of the usual teenage frustration and drama. Stuff any kid would write when their parents came home drunk night after night. But completely out of context? It could look bad. I need to get to the hospital, I told Martinez. You're free to leave, she said. But I really suggest you stay away from your parents for now. Uncle Tony gave a smug little smile. She's right. And I'll be advising my clients to file for a restraining order if you show up anywhere near them, for their protection. I stepped out of the station, and the cold December air slapped me in the face like needles. Back in my car, I cranked the heat and just sat there, trying to make sense of what to do next. Then my phone buzzed, a notification from my bank. The checking account that held $3,000 that morning now showed $47.83. My tuition payment? Gone. The rent money I'd been saving? Transferred out. Even the $500 I'd tucked away in a separate emergency savings account had vanished. All that was left was whatever I'd earned at my part-time job, which, thankfully, was with a different bank. In a fog, I drove to the hospital. The ER was packed with holiday accidents, burns from cooking, falls from decorating, and more than a few alcohol-related mishaps. I managed to convince a kind nurse that I was Jake's sister, and she led me to his room. He looked so small lying there, hooked up to IVs in both arms. Under the hospital's harsh lighting, the jaundice was impossible to ignore. His girlfriend, Emily, sat by his side, one hand resting over her still flat belly. You shouldn't be here, she said quietly, not even glancing at me. Your parents told me you're having some sort of breakdown. Alex, come on. You know that's not true. She finally looked up, and I saw the tear stains on her cheeks. Do I? She asked. You called the cops. On Christmas. Jake's been throwing up blood from all the stress. No, he's throwing up blood because his liver's failing, I said. The doctor told us it's acute gastritis. Stress-related, she snapped back. My parents already explained it all. Said you've been unstable since college. That you joined some kind of weird sobriety cult. I wanted to scream. Even now, even with Jake barely hanging on, their lies were still working. Luke told me Jake's been going to AA, I said. Her face went pale. That's not. He wouldn't. He's been trying to get clean for 3 months. I pressed. Ask him when he wakes up. Leave, she said softly, but her tone was unshakable. Go, before I have to get security. I walked out, but not before snapping a photo of the chart posted on Jake's door. The notes listed elevated liver enzymes and possible cirrhosis. They'd recommended more testing. Not a word about gastritis. In the parking garage, I climbed into my car and finally broke down. I cried until my chest hurt. Everything was unraveling faster than I could keep up. My family had completely turned on me, my savings were wiped out, and my brother was dying. My phone buzzed again. Sarah, I saw your mom's post, she said, skipping any pleasantries. My mom saw it first. I wanted you to know, I believe you. Jess, I get it, she interrupted. I know what it's like when parents flip the story and make themselves the victims. But listen, she added, be careful. My dad called your dad after he read the post. They talked for almost an hour. My stomach twisted. What did they say? I'm not sure, she admitted. But I overheard my dad mention something about keeping the story straight. About protecting traditions. They're planning something. After we hung up, I drove to the only place I knew might help, the 24-hour gym where I used to train for marathons. For me, pushing my body to its limits had always been a way to work through pain. A way to survive the trauma when nothing else made sense. So I ran. I ran on that treadmill until my legs were on fire. Until it felt like maybe, just maybe, I could outrun the wreckage my life had become. Around 3 a.m., my phone lit up with a new email from my college roommate. The subject line alone made my stomach drop. I'm worried about you. She had forwarded me a message from my mom, a full 3 pages long. It was packed with wild claims about my mental health falling apart. There were flat-out lies mixed in with distorted versions of things that actually happened. My mom had told her I'd been drinking nonstop at college, that I got involved with some kind of cult-like sobriety group that encouraged people to cut off their families, and that I was spiraling into paranoia and delusions. The scariest part? It all sounded just believable enough. Every lie was wrapped up with just enough truth to make it feel real. Sure, I had joined a sober support group, but it wasn't some cult. And yes, I'd been keeping my distance from my family, but not because I'd lost my grip. I took my time writing back to my roommate. I carefully explained things, attached screenshots from my parents' social media showing them drinking at parties, included some records from Jake's hospital visits, and even linked to an article that broke down family alcoholism and gaslighting. But even as I hit send, I couldn't help but wonder, would it be enough to make her believe me? The next morning, I woke up in my car, parked outside the gym. My phone was blowing up, 17 missed calls from different relatives, and 43 text messages. Each one felt more aggressive and blaming than the last. But one message caught my eye. It was from Dr. Morgan, the doctor who lived next door to my parents. I saw what happened last night. If you need a physician to verify your injuries, I'm willing to help. Your parents have been a danger to others, and themselves, for a long time. For the first time in a while, I felt a small spark of hope. Finally, someone who might actually back me up. I messaged her right away, and we arranged to meet up at a coffee shop not far from the hospital. Dr. Morgan showed up still wearing her scrubs, clearly exhausted from a night shift. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup and got straight to the point. I wasn't sure if I should step in, she admitted. But when I saw them dragging Jake to the car last month after he collapsed in the driveway, and then they wouldn't even let me help, I knew I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Then she pulled out her phone and started showing me security footage she'd saved. There were multiple videos of my parents completely wasted behind the wheel, clips of Jake being hauled inside the house unconscious, and even one where my dad threatened a delivery guy who dared to say something about his drunken state. I've been collecting this stuff for 2 years, she said quietly. I thought maybe someone else would speak up, but around here, everyone just laughs it off. The whole neighborhood treats their behavior like some running joke. We spent nearly an hour going through the videos and documents she'd compiled. She even had a detailed log with every incident, dates, times, all neatly recorded. It was solid evidence, the kind that could change things if anyone actually cared enough to listen. The problem, she told me, is that your parents are connected to everyone. The sheriff, the mayor, half the city council. They've been building those ties for decades, greased by booze and money. Just then, my phone buzzed again. It was a text from an unknown number. This is Luke. Can't use my regular phone. Then came the chilling part. Your parents are at the bar. They're meeting with 5 other families. I heard them say something about unified front and protecting our way of life. I showed Dr. Morgan the message. She read it over my shoulder, her face going pale. 5 families? She asked. I knew exactly who he meant. The Johnsons, the Patters, the Williamses, the Garcias, and the Thompsons. Every one of them had kids around the same age as Jake and me. And all of them held their own training nights, just like my parents did. They all had something to hide. They're closing ranks, I said quietly. Dr. Morgan looked grim. You haven't just gone after your parents. You've taken aim at a whole culture, one that's been built around ignoring and normalizing addiction. My phone rang. It was Jake's number. I picked up instantly. You need to stop, he said. His voice was hoarse and weak. Whatever you're doing, just stop. Jake, you're in the hospital with liver failure, I said. I'm fine. The doctors are overreacting. Mom and Dad explained everything. I've just been stressed about the baby. Jake, please, I begged. Luke told me you've been going to AA. There was a pause. Then, I don't know what you're talking about. You're confused. Mom's right, he added. You need help. They'd gotten to him. No one's gotten to me, he said firmly. I'm just sick of all the drama. If you really cared about me, you'd stop this. Apologize. Come home. And just like that, he hung up. I stared at the screen, feeling like the wind had been knocked out of me. Even now, laid up in a hospital bed, his body failing, he still couldn't pull away from them. Dr. Morgan gently placed her hand on my arm. Addiction isn't just about the body, she said softly. The mental hold can be even stronger. What am I supposed to do? I asked. Everyone thinks I've lost it. My own brother won't even back me up. You survive, she said, steady and sure. Keep track of everything. Document it all. The truth always comes out in the end. But deep down, I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep going. My college fund had vanished. My parents had turned the whole town against me. And Jake, he was slipping away while everyone pretended nothing was wrong. The rest of that day, I focused on trying to hold my life together. My boss at the bookstore on campus said I could take on more hours once I got back. My academic advisor helped me fill out paperwork for emergency financial aid. The sober support group started a GoFundMe, and within an hour, it had already raised $500. But for every little victory, my parents made sure I took 2 steps back. My mom called my job, telling my manager I was unstable and might be dangerous. My dad reached out to my professors, claiming he was worried about my mental state and hinting that I should take a medical leave. Then the police showed up at my door. 2 officers I didn't recognize stood outside. We need you to come with us, the older one said. Your parents have filed for an emergency psychiatric hold. They're concerned you might hurt yourself or someone else. My heart dropped. I'm not a danger to anyone. I'm not suicidal, I said, trying to stay calm. You're lying. Ma'am, the officer said. We've received statements from several family members and folks in the community. They say you've been acting unstable, making false emergency calls, harassing your brother in the hospital, and threatening people. None of that is true, I said. They're twisting everything. But none of it made a difference. All the paperwork was in order, signed by a judge who, I later found out, played in my parents' bowling league. They handcuffed me and put me in the back of a squad car. As we drove away, I looked out the window and watched the motel where I'd been staying get smaller and smaller. The psychiatric facility was an hour away. During intake, I tried to explain the truth, to tell them what was really happening. But the more I talked about how my parents had forced me to drink and how the whole community seemed to be in on keeping me quiet, the crazier I probably sounded. Have you taken any substances recently? The intake nurse asked, glancing at me. No, I told her. I'm completely sober. I added, I've been sober for 2 years now. She didn't even blink before saying, well, your family claims you've been drinking a lot. They're lying, I said flatly. She scribbled something down. It felt like every word out of my mouth was being twisted into something it wasn't. My marathon training was labeled as obsessive and unhealthy. My support group work? Suddenly that was seen as some kind of cult activity. Even the notes I'd taken about Jake's health were being painted as stalking and obsession. They stuck me in a plain white room with another patient who spent the entire night rambling to people who weren't there. No phone. No way to reach anyone who could back up my story. Just me and the growing gut punch of realization my parents had won this round. The next morning, a psychiatrist came in to talk. His name was Dr. Patel. He looked young, like maybe he'd just finished his residency, but he actually listened, which was a change. I took my time explaining everything. I stuck to the facts, left out anything that could come off as paranoid or delusional. Dr. Patel opened a thick file. Your parents sent quite a bit of documentation, he said, including diary entries where you wrote about hating them. Those are from when I was 15, I told him. What teenager doesn't write stuff like that? He kept flipping pages. There are also videos of you pretending to be drunk at family events. My heart dropped. Those fake performances I'd put on just to avoid more pressure to drink? They were now being used as evidence against me. I was pretending, I said quietly, so they'd stop hounding me about not drinking. So, you were being deceptive? He asked. Every honest thing I tried to say sounded like a warning sign. Each explanation only seemed to dig me in deeper. I was caught in this nightmare my family had spun, and the more I tried to untangle myself, the tighter it got. There's someone who can vouch for me, I said, nearly begging. Our neighbor, Dr. Morgan. She has security footage. Dr. Patel made a note. We'll follow up on that. But the look on his face told me everything. In his mind, I was just another troubled patient with family drama, maybe having a mental break, definitely someone who needed monitoring. Those 72 hours felt like they dragged on for a lifetime. No updates from the outside. No clue if Jake was okay. No idea if my college spot was still mine. No one to tell me if someone was even trying to help. I had to play the game in group therapy, not at the right moments, say I was working on myself, just to avoid being labeled resistant. Then on the third day, when I'd just about given up hope, Dr. Patel called me in. His face looked different, less skeptical, maybe even a little unsure. We spoke with Dr. Morgan, he said. She gave us some pretty telling footage. Plus, several people from your college, your support group, your advisor, even your job, called to give their side of the story. And it's very different from what your parents told us. I felt a wave of relief so strong it almost knocked me over. So, you believe me? I believe this is more complicated than it first appeared, he said carefully. But your parents are still your medical proxy because you're on their insurance. They want you to stay in treatment. They can't keep me here if I'm not a danger to myself or anyone else, I said quickly. No, he agreed. But they can make things hard. He gave me a small nod. I'm recommending your discharge. But you need a plan. Somewhere safe to go. Continued therapy. And as much distance as possible from this situation. He was absolutely right. I couldn't go back to the motel. My parents knew where I'd been staying. And I couldn't show up at the hospital either. They'd probably taken out a restraining order by now. So there I was, technically free, but broke, homeless, and totally on my own. Dr. Patel had a social worker take me back to town. During the drive, she handed me my phone. It had been held during my intake, so this was the first time I saw it light up in days. 3 days worth of messages poured in. Most were from my parents' little army of enablers, telling me to get help, to stop hurting the family, to think about Jake. Guilt bombs, basically. But mixed in with those were lifelines. Sarah, your parents tried to get my dad to say you were unstable when you were younger. He refused. Stay strong. My marathon coach, your spot on the team is safe. Don't let them break you. Luke, Jake's been asking for you. He's scared. And the one that shocked me most? Emily, I'm sorry. You were right. Jake told me everything. He needs you. The social worker dropped me off at the hospital. I didn't walk. I ran. I rushed through those sterile halls straight to Jake's room, terrified of what I might see. The ICU was a whole different atmosphere. Quieter, more serious, full of beeping machines keeping people alive. Jake was awake, but just barely. Tubes were everywhere. Oxygen, for lines, monitors. His skin looked pale and paper-thin. His eyes were glassy, like he wasn't really there. You came, he whispered. Of course I came, I said, trying to hold it together. Mom and Dad. They gave me beer yesterday, he said, tears starting to run from the corners of his eyes. Said it'd make me feel better. I couldn't say no. I never can. Jake. I'm dying. He said like he was just stating a fact. The doctors won't say it, but I can feel it. My body's shutting down. I held his hand gently, careful not to disturb the four. We're going to get you on the transplant list. There's still hope. They won't give consent, he said. Mom and Dad say I just need to tough it out. That we don't believe in taking parts from dead people. I couldn't breathe for a second. The cruelty of it was like a punch to the gut. They would honestly rather let their own son die than give up their twisted family beliefs. I ruined my liver, he said. Emily was in the corner, eyes puffy and red from crying. I tried to reason with them, she said quietly. They told me if I don't back off, they'll have me declared an unfit mother. They can't do that. Can't they? She said, looking right at me. Look what they just did to you. 3 days in a psych ward for telling the truth. She wasn't wrong. My parents had shown they'd burned down everything, including their own children, just to keep their story intact. A nurse came in to check on Jake's vitals. She looked at the monitors and frowned. These numbers aren't good, she said. Has the family decided about the transplant evaluation? They're still thinking, Jake said weakly. The look the nurse gave us said it all. There wasn't much time left. Once she left, Jake turned to me. I need you to do something, he said. In my apartment, under the bed, there's a box. Everything's in it. Recordings from AA meetings, journals, medical files I've kept hidden. If anything happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you. I interrupted. Promise me, he said. His grip tightened with surprising strength. Promise you'll use it. Don't let them do to others what they did to us. I promised, even as my heart broke. My big brother, who'd once carried me on his shoulders and taught me to ride a bike, was preparing for a death that didn't have to happen. I left the hospital as visiting hours ended. Jake's apartment key clutched in my hand. The weight of his trust felt heavier than anything I'd ever carried. As I drove through the dark streets, I realized this wasn't just about saving Jake anymore. It was about breaking a cycle that had destroyed generations of our family. And if my parents wanted a war, they were about to get one. I stood outside Jake's apartment building, his key cold in my palm. The December wind cut through my torn Oregon State hoodie as I climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. Inside, the place smelled like stale beer and desperation. Empty bottles lined every surface, and I found the box exactly where he said it would be. My hands trembled as I opened it. AA chips dating back 3 months. Journal entries detailing his attempts to quit, each one ending with, Mom and Dad found out, or they showed up at the meeting. Medical records he'd hidden from our parents showing liver enzyme levels that would terrify any doctor. And at the bottom, a USB drive labeled, Insurance. I plugged it into Jake's laptop. Video after video loaded. Jake secretly recording our parents forcing drinks on him when he tried to refuse. Mom pouring beer into his orange juice at breakfast. Dad threatening to kick him out if he embarrassed the family by going to rehab. The final video was from last week. Jake begging them to let him get help, and Dad responding by smashing his AA chips with a hammer. My phone buzzed. Emily, Jake's asking for you. Hurry. Back at the hospital, I found chaos. Mom and Dad were in Jake's room with their lawyer. Papers spread across his bed. Jake looked even worse than before. His breathing labored. Sign here, Mom was saying, pen pressed into Jake's shaking hand. Power of attorney, will make all your medical decisions. Stop, I burst through the door. Dad's face went purple. Security, this woman has a restraining order? But I was already at Jake's bedside, shoving the papers away. Jake, don't sign anything. I have your videos, everything you documented. Mom lunged for the USB drive in my hand, but Emily stepped between us. I called them, she said to me. I couldn't let them do this anymore. 2 security guards appeared, but so did Dr. Morgan, who'd been waiting in the hallway. I'm this patient's physician. She lied smoothly. Everyone out except immediate family. We are immediate family. Dad snarled. The patient has requested only his sister remain, Dr. Morgan said, checking Jake's chart. His condition is critical. Please respect his wishes. Uncle Tony started to argue, but Dr. Morgan cut him off. Sir, this is a medical emergency. Leave now, or I'll have security escort you out. They left, but not before Mom hissed at me. This isn't over. Once alone, Jake grabbed my hand weakly. Play the videos. For the doctors. For everyone. Dr. Morgan called in the hospital's patient advocate and the on-call psychiatrist. Together, we watched Jake's documentation. The psychiatrist's face grew increasingly grim. This is clear evidence of abuse, she said. We need to contact Adult Protective Services immediately. And the transplant evaluation? I asked. We'll expedite it. With proper documentation of forced alcohol consumption, he could qualify despite the addiction. Hope flickered in Jake's eyes for the first time in years, but I knew our parents wouldn't give up easily. Sure enough, within an hour, the hospital administrator arrived with Uncle Tony and a judge. Another golf buddy of Dad's. We have a court order, the administrator said apologetically. The parents retained medical decision-making authority. Based on what? Dr. Morgan demanded. Based on their daughter being mentally unstable and manipulating their son, the judge said. I've seen the documentation. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Your Honor, are you aware that you've been playing golf with my father for 15 years? That you attended his birthday party last month where he served alcohol to minors? The judge's face flushed. Young lady, you're bordering on contempt. I'm bordering on the truth, I shot back. How much has my father paid for your campaign contributions? Uncle Tony grabbed for my phone, but I'd already uploaded the video to the cloud. The hospital administrator looked uncomfortable. Perhaps we should review this matter more thoroughly. That's when Sarah's father walked in. My heart sank until I saw his expression. Determined, not threatening. I'm here to provide testimony, he announced, about what really happened when my daughter called CPS years ago, about how these families coordinate to silence their children. Behind him came 3 more people, parents from the other training night families, but they weren't here to support my parents. They were here to confess. My son is in rehab, Mrs. Johnson said quietly. Has been for 6 months. I couldn't say anything because she glanced at my parents, who had just stormed back in. Because we all agreed. Mr. Rudpaters finished. Protect the tradition. But my daughter tried to call herself last year. She's 15. The room erupted. Dad shouted about betrayal and family loyalty. Mom screamed that they were all liars, jealous of our close-knit family. Uncle Tony threatened lawsuits against everyone, but the dam had broken. Mrs. Zipkarsha pulled out her phone, showing pictures of bruises on her son's arms from when he'd refused to drink. Mr. Thompson admitted he'd been secretly attending Al-Anon meetings, terrified his wife would find out. The judge, realizing the scope of what he'd walked into, quickly excused himself. The administrator called for additional security and social services. In the chaos, I noticed Jake's monitor starting to alarm. His breathing had become more labored, his skin taking on a grayish tint. He needs the now, Dr. Morgan said urgently. We're running out of time. I consent, I said. As a sister, you have no authority. Uncle Tony interrupted. Actually, she does. Emily stepped forward, holding a paper in her hand. Jake and I got married yesterday, she said, calm but firm, right there in the hospital chapel. I've made her our medical proxy. You could probably hear my mom's scream echo 3 floors down. You manipulative little, she started yelling, but the psychiatrist cut her off, rising from her chair. That's enough, she said. I'm putting both of you under psychiatric evaluation. Their behavior is unstable, and they could be a danger to others. You can't do this, Dad shouted, charging toward her, but security rushed in before he could get near. As they dragged my parents out, still screaming about betrayal and lawsuits, I saw something shift in their eyes. That moment when they realized they'd finally lost control, for good. The next few hours passed in a daze. Jake was officially listed for a liver transplant, status 1, which meant he was at the very top of the list. Families of other patients gave statements to the police, sharing stories about years of forced drinking and abuse. Adult Protective Services began looking into all 5 households. I sat beside Jake's hospital bed, gripping his hand while machines kept him alive. Emily sat across from me, one hand gently resting on her belly, guarding their baby. I'm sorry, Jake whispered, for not standing up to them sooner, for leaving you to fight alone. No, I told him. That doesn't matter now. Just get better. Then he turned to Emily. The baby, he said softly. Promise me, no alcohol. Not ever. I promise, she said without hesitation. Never. We're ending it here, I added. We're breaking the cycle. That's when Dr. Morgan walked in with a hopeful smile. We found a match, she said. A donor liver. Surgery's in 2 hours. Jake squeezed my hand tight. If I don't make it, you will. But if I do, use it all. The videos, the journals. Don't let them keep hurting people. 2 hours later, they rolled him away for surgery. Emily and I waited in the family room, surrounded by tension and hope. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Relatives were blowing it up, some taking sides, some demanding silence. Even the town Facebook page had lit up, with neighbors arguing about tradition versus protecting kids. Luke texted, finally. Proud of you. Sarah showed up with coffee and sat down beside me. My dad's filing charges, she told me, her voice low. From what happened when I was 15. Others are stepping forward too. This is tearing everything apart, I muttered. No, she said. It's exposing what was already broken. 8 hours later, the surgeon finally came out. The transplant went well, she said. He's stable. Emily and I collapsed into each other, crying with relief. Jake had survived. He was going to meet his daughter. He was getting a second chance at life. But the battle wasn't over. As Jake recovered, the legal storm got worse. My parents, fresh out of psychiatric evaluation, hired top-tier lawyers. They filed lawsuits against the hospital, the doctors, me, Emily, pretty much everyone who'd spoken up. I was constantly bouncing between court prep and Jake's bedside. The campus bookstore had to let me go. I'd missed too many shifts. My professors gave me incompletes for the semester. My marathon training? Completely out the window. But little by little, the tide started to turn. The police uncovered years of evidence, files, medical records, testimonies, documenting abuse in all 5 households. The district attorney, someone who hadn't played golf with my dad, decided to press charges. Child Protective Services removed 3 younger siblings from unsafe homes. Jake kept improving. The yellow tint in his skin faded. His hands stopped trembling. And for the first time since he was 10, he was completely sober. One morning, he looked at me and said, when I get out, I want to go to rehab. 90 days. I need to learn how to really live without it. What about Mom and Dad? I asked. I don't care anymore, he said, more sure of himself than I'd ever heard. I'm done chasing their approval. Emily had been quietly documenting everything. Journals, photos, notes, for their daughter. She deserves to know, she told me. Why she won't see her grandparents. Why we made that choice. 3 months later, the trials began. I spent hours on the stand, recounting training nights, forced drinking, that awful Christmas attack. Jake testified from rehab, via video. The other family's kids shared their stories, too. My parents clung to the same old story, that we were just bitter kids trying to destroy a wholesome family tradition. But the evidence was overwhelming. The videos, the medical records, the witnesses. They were convicted of multiple counts of child endangerment and assault. The sentence? Just 2 years. But it was something. The real consequence was watching their reputation crumble, their social circle vanish, everything they'd built, gone. That fall, I re-enrolled at Oregon State. My financial aid came through, and I worked 3 part-time jobs to make ends meet. The sober support group welcomed me back like I'd never left. Jake finished rehab and started going to AA meetings. He even got a job at a recovery center, sharing his story to help others. Emily gave birth to a beautiful, healthy baby girl, Lily, and that little girl would never know the feeling of alcohol forced down her throat. The 5 families who'd suffered alongside us each went their own way. Some got help. Others moved far away, maybe trying to start over or hide what happened. The neighborhood felt different, like it was finally waking up from a long, ugly hangover. That spring, I finally ran my marathon. My time was awful. I'd missed months of training, but I crossed the finish line. Sarah was there cheering me on. Jake couldn't be there. He was speaking at an AA convention, but he sent me a message, proud of you. He added, Mom and Dad saw your race in the paper. They're furious you're flaunting your new lifestyle. Perfect. We didn't reach out after they were released. They moved a couple towns over, joined a new church, and told people their kids had turned on them for no reason. Now and then I'd hear whispers, rumors about how we were addicts, liars, money hungry. But it didn't matter anymore. Jake was alive. Lily was safe. The cycle had been broken. 2 years to the day after that terrible Christmas, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a photo, Jake holding Lily at her 2nd birthday. He was sober. He was smiling. He was alive. The message read, "Thank you for fighting when I couldn't." K. I stared at that photo for a long while. We'd lost our parents, our childhood home, our inheritance, most of our extended family. But Jake was here. Lily was safe. We had broken the chain. I texted back, worth it. And it was. Every lost connection, every court hearing, every sleepless night, worth it. Because Jake was alive and free. Because Lily would never sit at a kitchen table, 10 years old, learning to drink while her parents cheered. The cycle was broken. The price was everything. And I'd pay it again.